look at me recording twice in 1 month and pretending it's consistent. Yeah, so I was supposed to record this a week ago, but here I am the next Sunday and finally recording this video. I'm finally giving y'all my quarterly wrap up, and this is also going to be an update on my 2022 reading and writing goals. 2022 is turning into the year of DNFs. For some reason, I keep picking up books that are just not worth my time, and I just keep putting them down and just like forget it, I'm not reading this. So let me talk about the DNFs so far from Q2 of this year. So the books I DNF'd were Black Girls Must Die Exhausted by Jane Allen, My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones, Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark, The Bone Orchard by Sarah A. Mueller, and Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Call. So that's all that I'm going to give to those books. No need to talk about them because they just weren't worth my time. So I ended up finishing 5 books in the second quarter of the year, which is a little bit sad, but we're going to keep moving. The first book that I finished was Darcy Coates' House of Shadows. I gave that, I believe, a 3-star rating. It wasn't the best Darcy Coates book, and I thought it was gonna be a lot different than it was. It was a marriage of convenience in the story, but it was also a gothic horror, and the book wasn't long enough for it to really hit any points that it should have hit. There wasn't much to the story, and one thing that bothered me was that the main character suddenly fell in love with the husband that she was marrying for convenience after a few days, really, and what made her fall in love with him was him telling the truth about his family past in the house, and it wasn't really love, and I don't understand where her mind came from when she jumped to that conclusion. But the whole love part of the story wasn't really making much sense, and it honestly could have not been included at all, and the story would have been a lot better. And if it stuck a lot more to the horror elements in the plot, then it would have been a higher rating for me. There is a sequel out for this book, but I don't plan on picking it up. The next book that I picked up was Toni Morrison's Home. It was a 3.5 stars for me. It's not a Toni Morrison book that I usually recommend to people who haven't read her books before. Like I said in the past, she's my favorite author, but it's not one of the few books that are in my constantly rotating favorites list from her. So with Home, there are a few trigger warnings, and these trigger warnings are kind of why I would recommend this book. It's short, but it's not really easy to get through for some people, and the trigger warnings are basically it's sexual situations with a child, and a lot of people are sensitive about that, and the point of it has to do with one of the main characters, and I didn't really like having that in the story. I don't think it really added much to the story at all, but that's one thing to look out for before picking up this book. There's also abuse and violence and racism, of course, because the Toni Morrison book is always racism discussed in the plot. But like I said, it's not really for the faint-hearted. There are other books that you can pick up from Toni Morrison that don't really focus too much on what happens in this book. And yeah, I gave that a 3.5 stars. It was a quick read. I hate that the cover for this book isn't like the other ones with the yellow writing on the spine and the solid color cover. The next book that I read was a 5-star. It was a poetry book. It's Warsan Shire's recent book called Bless the Daughter Raised by a Voice in Her Head. And if you read her previous chat book, then you would see that it's kind of related to that book. I also gave that one a 5 stars when I read it the first time, like years ago. And it's not really much to say about this book because, like I said, it's poetry. It's just a poetry collection. but I do, anyways, but I do recommend her poetry collection. The next book that I read and gave 4 stars to was The Toll by Cherie Priest, or Sherry, I'm not sure how her name is pronounced. And it is a horror with some Southern Gothic elements to it. Some people say it's a Southern Gothic horror, but I would disagree. It doesn't really hone in on a lot of Southern Gothic elements as much as like a true Southern Gothic. And this book was one of my anticipated releases at one point, and it was actually up to my expectations. And when I read it at first, I was thinking, all this weird stuff is happening, something that's clearly supernatural, and there's haunting, obviously, and I was wondering, well, does anyone in this story actually knows what's happening? A little bit into the book, maybe close to halfway through, maybe a third of the way through, I would say, it does show that some people are aware of what's going on, which is good. So if you pick up this book and you're just like, so all this stuff is happening and no one knows what's going on, just wait, it does come up where a few characters are fully aware of what's going on. We do have ghosts, we do have a supernatural creature from another world, so if you're interested in something like that, then I suggest picking up this book. The final book that I finished during the second quarter of the year is my favorite book of the year so far. It's a new release, and it's Samir Ahmed's Hollow Fires. I really, really enjoyed this book. I'm grateful to, one, get it the day before it was released, and two, I got to get it signed. Hold on a sec. By Samira. You can see she signed it. Hopefully that's in focus. Let me see. Okay. Yeah. So I got to meet her at an event. She had an event at a local bookstore, like I said in my previous video. So I met her, I signed her book, she signed mine, and she gave a lot of insightful information on herself and on what she wrote about in this book. I really, even if you don't read YA, I really suggest picking this one up. It's really, really good. It's a mystery story, it's a mystery YA, so it's not like a typical YA novel that a lot of people like to talk about, like with John Green books and all of that, like corny teenage stuff. But what's happening in this book is really important. It touches on Islamophobia and racism and a lot of stuff that's happening right now because of COVID and the Trump administration, increasing hatred, well, it's not really increasing hatred, but I would say increasing the prevalence of hatred and hate crimes. And I think that this book does a really good job of highlighting what's going on right now. So, Hollow Fires, definitely 5 out of 5 for me. Editing me here, I actually read one more book in June, and that was Memphis by Tara M. Stringfellow, which I gave 4 stars. It's a historical fiction, multi-generational tale about a few women and one of the girls in a black family in Tennessee. And what's nice about this book is that it centers on the women and some of the guys in their life, but it's not super focused on the men. It's more of how the women interacted and lived around them and how they didn't rely too much on the men, unlike in some other stories. And there's a trigger warning for sexual violence and lynching and racism, so be careful with that. So that's it for my reading stats for the last 3 months. So now we gotta talk about the dreadfulness that is my reading goals and writing goals, because it's been abysmal. So in my first video, I said that I want to read all these books and have all these challenges, knowing that I'm a mood reader. So I set myself up for failure. Having reading challenges for myself was not the greatest idea. I thought it would help me get through my shelves, but it just pushed me to read other books that aren't included in my challenges. Like, for example, the Toni Morrison challenge. I've read 3 over these last 6 months, and I started going out of order because of my mood reading. I decided to give up on that challenge because, like, being a mood reader, if I don't feel like picking up one of those books, I'm not going to pick it up. And that's the same thing with my challenge of reading adaptations. I think I've read 1 adaptation for a book and 1 adaptation for a movie and 1 adaptation for a show, and that's it. I haven't really gotten through any books, well, that many books really, that have been or will be adapted, and I might do a little bit better on that one because that's a little bit, I think that would be a little bit easier when it comes to my mood reading than the Toni Morrison challenge, but at the same time, who knows. I did finish 16 books so far, and out of my 24, like I said, I'm going to read at least 24, and if I get to the 24 books before or by the end of the 3rd quarter, then I'll expand how many books I'm going to read. I'll probably make it up to at least 30, no less than that. We'll see. And I haven't written, I haven't been writing in a few months. I haven't written anything really since the end of March, really since spring break. I haven't really gotten in the mood to write anything. I was finishing out school, so I didn't really have much time to really just sit down and think about what I'm gonna write, or even working on my novel, to be honest. I tried to start a new draft where I take bits and pieces of past drafts and put it together. I've gotten that far, but to really sit down and finish it and have it like a complete final draft before submitting it, that hasn't happened. But I will work on that soon, hopefully. And basically, my reading and writing goals hasn't really been achieved that well, outside of reading above half of the books I should have had done by now, which is great. So hopefully next quarter I'll do a better job at reading books that maybe fit the challenges that I set up for myself. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. I highly doubt it's going to happen, to be honest. But I will hopefully pick up more books that I won't DNF. Because like I said, I've been DNFing a lot of books lately. So hopefully I pick up books that I'll actually enjoy reading and I'll finish. So that's it. Those are my reading and writing goals update and my quarterly update. Hopefully I will. Don't hold me to it. Hopefully I'll post another video this month. We'll see. And until next time, bye.